Welcome back to Inside the Lines. Happy Monday. Great way to start off the week. I'm feeling a little bit upset. Big Cheesy, Everett Bryan already in the chat. Thank you for your thoughts and prayers in this time. Not only is Georgia lost, but the Eagles lose to the Niners as well. So I've felt better. I've had better days. But you know what? We move on because that's nobody's problem but mine. Moose is here today.
That's first world problems. You're complaining after two straight national championships while you were at the university.
Yeah. I mean, I can only.
Yeah, only two national championships. Yeah.
Super Bowl.
It just makes you hungry. I want that third.
Really 10-2.
Whatever. All right. That's enough. All right, let's start talking about the college football playoff. Before we do have some Monday Night Football picks, we'll get into those quickly. But first, let's take our first look, our first calculations at the college football playoff, what we're looking at right now. Jake, you can talk about this too. We've seen a ton of line movement really off the bat between Michigan and Alabama. Tell us how, in general, this betting strategy works now that it's going to be a few weeks before these games start.
Yeah, we think there's some line manipulation going on, especially when they first their odds. Yeah, these sharp bettors, they want to get good odds later. So as soon as the line opened, money went coming in on Alabama. So you could see it went from Michigan plus 140 to plus 180. So people are on Bama there, but I think it's just line manipulation. So it went from -4 to even -1 in some places, the spread. But Steve and I were talking, and we think it'll probably close around Michigan -3, -4. And so we're thinking that's going to probably go back towards Michigan's side. So if you like Michigan, get it while it's below 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we were saying, if you like Bama, you might as well wait because you do think that this line is going to come back towards Michigan. You could probably just get them to cover the spread, less of a pick 'em there. But certainly a lot to dissect through the weeks, and we will address this as we get closer to the playoffs here. But definitely an interesting start. See line movement. You'll see some manipulation. We'll try to keep you guys aware of that so you don't fall for that. So we'll keep you guys updated there. We're going to move on to Monday Night Football. We're pretty in line with the odds makers here as far as the spread goes. Slight lean to the under. We have this total coming in at 38 and a player prop we like here. So, Steven, I'll let you talk about this.
Yeah, the line was at 41.5 when it opened. It's come down for a lot of reasons. Obviously, Cincinnati's offense is struggling big time since the Joe Burrow injury. I like Trevor Lawrence over 13.5 rushing yards. I liked it more before Jacob rained on my parade with his deal downs. Potential. But anyway, so Lawrence has only run for 17 total yards the last 2 weeks, but he has 3 rushing touchdowns, which is a big sign to me that he's aware that he needs to use his legs as a weapon. Travis Etienne is playing, but he's got rib injuries. So I think that his workload could be reduced and could lead to Lawrence getting a few more carries. And the model line is 21, which is actually slightly under his 2023 average of 21.8. The over is 15-9 going back to last season at home. He tends to run more at home. I'm not sure why, but that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like it. I think I'm on Trevor Lawrence, but I'm on Trevor Lawrence over 3.5 rushing attempts, just because if he kneels down, you don't want to get screwed late in the game. But I think this is a good prime spot for him to run the ball. I played him over 3.5 carries and Travis Etienne under 16.5, just because I think they're going to manage his workload. I think he gets somewhere. I saw on Twitter that there's around 15 to 20% chance of re-injury when you have this rib chest injury. So they're going to want to limit his touches to 20 or less. So I think around 15, 16 carries and 4 or 5 receptions sounds about right.
Okay, good stuff there. I see a lot of questions in the chat about this game, Steven, if we could pull up the model here. I see Nick S. asking about Evan Ingram. I guess that this might be the first time we ever disagree with you, Nick, with our picks here. I saw him over 4.5 catches, which still could be possible. Let's see what we have here.
We have him at 4.8 yards, 4.8 catches, which is probably good value. Good consensus, at least.
Right.
For the over there.
Let's look over here at ATN over 2.5 catches and or 18.5 yards.
Yeah, we like both of those. Hopefully, rib injury. I don't know that how that factors with his receiving. But we've been high on ATN's increased use as a receiver, not quite like his Clemson days, but early in the year, especially, he had a lot of good games in a row where he was being used a lot as a receiver, and he broke out at last week against Houston with most of his more damage done to the air early in the game than on the ground.
Right. Big Cheesy saying, hammer that like button before you hammer your bets. I think that is a great saying. Love that. If you guys could hit the like button for us. Let's move down to Big Cheesy's question over here, talking about Jake Browning, if we have value for an interception tonight at -140.
We have him averaging 1 interception per simulation, which is, I guess, it's actually it's more than 100. It's not 100%, right? Chance. But it's probably more in line of, if I put math to it, we probably would take that at -160, -170. So why don't we go for -140? I think that Browning is actually passed for a decent number of yards. It's, completion percentage and yards have not been bad. I mean, 19 for 26 for 227 against Pittsburgh is pretty good. And even against Baltimore, when he came in, I thought he had some decent downfield passes. But he also got lucky with some tip balls that resulted in 50 of those yards from Jamar Chase last week. So that's a good sign when you have a guy who's taking chances. He knows that he has to get the Chase and Higgins is back. There's no other chance. They're not going to be able to run the ball. They're a really terrible running team. And the Jags have been great run defense. So he's going to have to let it loose. And that just pure volume alone in attempts should keep it. Gives you a high chance of an interception.
Yeah, so he's averaging I think 11.7 yards per completion, which is decent for a backup quarterback. I like this play here. I think, I'd play up to -160 here. I was surprised it was just at -140.
Derek also mentioning the Jacksonville opponents average 1 interception per game, so like that to go with it too. Let's look at, I saw it in the chat, Jamar Chase over, I believe the line's low.
Yeah, the line's low. There's definitely value there.
But we have him at 72 yards. I think the line was around 56.
Yeah, we have value there a lot. I didn't go with it just because I should have. I should have picked that one over the Trevor Lawrence bet, but because he's
Campbell banged up, I think. And with T. Higgins back, I think it's a good spot for Jamar Chase to go over here. With Jaguars secondary a little banged up. I got it at 54.5 yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Then we look at Joe Mixon over here. We have him at 19 yards, 19 receiving yards, so just about in line with the odds makers there. But some good value on Chase there, some good value on Lawrence. Someone was asking about who my first touchdown pick is for tonight. We were just talking about this before the show. It was in between Lawrence and Evan Ingram. I think, like Jake was saying, they had a few design plays for him last week to get in the end zone. I think this is a great team for them to be able to be flexible and trying to figure out their scheme. So this could be the Evan Ingram pick, first touchdown of the season, I believe. Or I like Trevor Lawrence. I haven't decided yet.
Logan
Tune
Wilson
in tonight.
doesn't break his ankle, right, Steven?
What's that?
If Logan Wilson doesn't go for his ankle.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a chance that he's going to be running for a touchdown, and then Logan Wilson will do that hip drop tackle, and it'll be it.
Yeah, yuck. All right, I think that is all of the questions right now for Monday Night Football. If they come to you, please continue to ask them in the chat. Let's move over to the association. 2 games tonight, so not too much value here. Now, this play over here, we're looking at Boston going to the Pacers. We're calling this a model sprinkle because we only make this a 1-point game. But as far as value, might as well sprinkle a little bit of money on that plus 190 money line.
Yeah, I mean, Tyrese Halliburton might be out. So he's a game time decision. Didn't play the last game, but they did put up 144 and won by 15 at Miami without him. I have too much resentment from his bad game when he's at Gonzaga to believe in Andrew Nemhart, but Jacob and Derek insist that he's actually pretty effective as when he gets a chance. The interesting game line about this is the over. It's steaming up, it's going up to at least 242.5, probably higher now, because the over is 16-2 in Pacers games this year. The reason why the model is leaning slightly under is because we obviously are still using stats from last year, but even this year, as many points as they allow, they're actually, Indiana is actually allowing 119, which is less than they did last year at home. And their defensive three-point percentage is fairly good at 37% at home. It's horrible on the road. They allow 44%. Then Boston's still only shooting 33% from three-point range on the road with Porzingis out as well. So, I like the value. Even if Halliburton's out, then I assume that you might be able to get plus 220, plus 230. So, I like that sprinkle.
Yeah, it's tough right now with not knowing the injury situation, but so keep your eye out for that given this play pick here. But we'll move over to New Orleans going to Sacramento. I think we have this as a 1-point win for Sacramento, but we're focusing a little more on a player prop here.
Yeah, the line is themed in our direction from the Sacramento -5 to just -3 last time we checked most places. The Kings allow 6 more points per game at home. And the public is backing that with CJ McCollum, who came back from his injury, helped them to 2 impressive wins. And then he sat and they lost their last game without him, but he's good to go today. I also like Jonas Valanciunas over 21.5 points and rebounds, not assists in this case. I think just points and rebounds.
That's my bad.
He's projected for 23.8, which is just a lean and not necessarily a good value at -120. But I'm banking on the other name. His recent history, his history against Sabonis has been good. For his career, he's averaged 25.6 in the 12 games versus Sabonis. But if you don't include the first 4, I believe, where he was in Toronto, that average went up to 30.5. The over is 8-1 in that time frame versus Sabonis. And the one under, he had 21 points and rebounds. So he just missed that 21.5. He averages more on the road, 25.2 than at home, 22.4 going back to last year. And the over is 29-17 on these road games, 3-1 versus Sacramento.
Boom. Let's move to the model for this game. A few questions in the chat, if you don't mind, if we head over to this matchup here. We'll start with Zion. His points set at 23.5 right now.
Zion, 23.5. We have 23.2, so nothing.
All right, we move on. How about Drew Holiday? Sorry, this is a different game. Moving back to the Boston game, Drew Holiday over 1.5 threes at -140, if we have some value there.
Drew Holiday is a little bit on our S list because he did not get 11.5 rebounds and assists the other day. He had 11. Despite Tatum getting booted from the game and every other reason why he should have had more production. So that said, we are projecting him for 2 3-pointers.
Okay.
So, yes.
And then how about his assists?
Assists? We have him at 6.3 assists. What's the line?
4.5.
There you go. Can't lose.
Look at that. Like that there. Jake mentioning in the chat, Horford at 10.5 points also has some value. Let's see where we have him in the chat.
Yeah, we have him at 11.5 because he's put up big games, 20 and 16 the last 2 nights, starting and playing 33 minutes. So we have him projected for 34 minutes and 11.5 points per sim. Good value at 10.5.
I'm going to send you back to New Orleans here, looking at Brandon Ingram. Not sure what his lines are right now. We could look at OddsJam if we have any value on him as a player in general.
The line we're getting is for his points, rebounds, assists is 32.5 as a consensus, and we have him at 32 basically. So probably not going to have much value across the board. I wouldn't think. I could check the OddsJam screen for variance.
Yeah, I'm sure it's 32 or 32.5 in most places.
I'm curious to see what the defensive effort's going to be. If it's going to be like playoff basketball in the in-season tournament, where scoring tends to go down by like 10 points a game, or if it's just going to be regular season pace and more fun, for lack of a better term. Let's see, who am I looking at here again? Going down to Brandon Ingram. He looks like he's 32.5. There's 33.5s out there at -115 on both sides. On Fanatics, 32.5 with juice on the under, which could be interesting. Plus money on the under. We would lean under if anything.
Yeah. All right. If anyone has more NBA questions, please ask them in the chat. We are going to move on to some of the more important parts of the show is the act now, looking at the steam and the line movement for the NFL early in the week so you can get ahead of it and get the best value. Now we'll start with Thursday Night Football. I mean, this line I think is already past 32. But if you do like the under, this was definitely an act now situation. Correct?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's down to 30.5. So I just looked it up. My database that I currently operating on goes back to 2011 season. The lowest number I can see both involve Derek's Cleveland Browns, who are actually involved with 4 of the previous 6 lowest, which is a good indicator of how good the Browns offense has been over the years. But the previous low I see is 32.5. So this thing could go. This is Iowa territory. This is like Academy, Naval Academy, Army Navy type level. So the model is actually going to lean a little bit on New England to cover because it's hard to cover a fairly large 6-point spread when you're not expected to score more than 13. So and there's a high chance of short field from turnovers. Mitch Trubisky will probably be in there for Pittsburgh. So that would be the one thing that, it's not just the offenses might combine for 7 total for under 10, but the defenses could help both teams put up points.
Right. Let's move over to the Ravens versus the Rams. Now, our model makes this more of a 9.5-point game for the Ravens. So we think this is an act now. You think this team will start to come on them when all these Lamar NFC trends start coming out again?
Yeah, and I think the people looking at models and other stats will clue in on the same factors that we are that our model has. The reason why the Rams have been doing so well recently is, well, first, the final score doesn't always reflect how much they dominated. Like the Cleveland game was pretty close yesterday. But the big thing is Stafford, as we know, needs pass protection, and he has been untouched. Last 2 weeks, 0 sacks, and only 1 sack each in the third and fourth game before that. But Baltimore is a whole different beast in terms of rushing guys. Obviously, leading the league in sacks this year without any kind of well-known sack artist. It's all defensive schemes and clever coaching. They are averaging 4 sacks per game at home. So I think that without the protection that Stafford needs to have success, Baltimore will cover this.
Okay. Let's move over to the Lions-Bears. Now, we have some value on the over here. The total set at 42.5. I believe we have it at 49. You think a lot of this, because of Detroit and their team total over, essentially will start to make this go over?
Yeah, I got to look at the weather. So the initial steam bumped up, and then it came crashing down in the last hour. And it's because I looked at the weather report, and it was for Chicago. It seems not bad. 40, some precipitation, wind gusts in the mid to upper 20s. But I think that's enough to scare people off. It's being bet down. But the reason why I thought there would be steam on the over, because the last 3 games that these two teams have played, they've gone for 51, and 61, I believe. And Detroit's scored 26 plus in 4 of the last 5 games. But this is one's going to be, expect some real swings based on the weather.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. We'll keep Derek the weatherman on that game as well. Let's move over to some more steam alert. We're seeing the Texans open up as 4.5-point favorites versus the Jets. Now steam to 6. Do you think this line will continue to grow, or do you think it'll come back?
I think it'll stay where it is with Tank Dell out. The Jets defense obviously still great, and without Dell, the number of receiving options for CJ Stroud goes down. And while they've been good and Stroud's put up big passing yard totals, Houston hasn't been putting up a ton of points, right? It's been like 21 pretty much consistently. The Jets can't score, so but they have no quarterbacks. But how do I say this? They gotta at some point manufacture something on defense, you would think, to put up double digits. But I don't expect this line to move much for where it is.
Okay, good to know there. Let's move to the Niners versus Seattle. Now this line was around 10.5. We saw some quick steam to the Niners at 12.5. Now coming back around 10.5. Do you think this is just implying maybe a letdown spot after the Eagles win?
Yeah, so I was looking at the numbers this morning. It was, as expected, within 10.5 to 12.5 because of how good San Francisco was against Philly. And then I just checked before the show, it's down to 10.5. So I think that there's some manipulation there, and people assuming that either a letdown game for San Francisco and or high backdoor cover chance for Seattle.
Mm-hmm. Let's move over to the Broncos going to the Chargers. We like the under here. We think the steam will just continue to head towards the under.
Yeah, and we actually have a lot of strong model value on the Chargers to cover. We have a line more at -5, and it's because the Chargers defense, the narrative is all year long is they're terrible, especially against the pass. But they have allowed, now we know that Green Bay actually has good offense, right? So they held Green Bay to 23. Baltimore has scored 30 plus for 5 straight games. They held them to 20, and Baltimore needed that late Zay Flowers touchdown to put up that. And then New England stinks, but they did hold them to 0. So, you can't do better than that. So they've only allowed 318 passing yards last 2 weeks. And Denver, they obviously lost to Houston. Russell had 3 interceptions, but more importantly, Denver's only had over 200 passing yards once in the last 8 games. So the defensive weakness of the Chargers is not something that looks like Denver can capitalize on. And even though Joey Bosa has been out, Khalil Mack has 2 sacks for every game for the last 3 games. So he's kind of made up for that production, and he's been all over the place. They line him up everywhere, and he's been destroying, teams. He embarrassed Ronnie Stanley of the Ravens repeatedly. So, the Chargers defense is sneaky good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's move to one last game. I don't really love the narrative here. Cowboys, 3.5-point favorites versus the Eagles. Our model makes this a 6.5-point game towards Dallas. Where do you see this line going? Any steam involvement?
I think it's moved all the way to 3.5 in a few spots, and I wouldn't be surprised if it went to 4. Just because at this point, Philly can't really run, right? They can get the only way they can seem to get running first down is the tush push. I don't know what I think the running backs last game they had no production. Dallas only allows 83 yards per game, 3.7 yards per carry at home. Then another problem is Philly's pass defense. So they allowed 314 at San Francisco, 339 to Buffalo. They held Kansas City to 177, but that was if MVS catches that ball, that number goes to 250. If Justin Watson doesn't drop his two balls, it goes up to around 300. And then before that, they allowed 374 to Dallas in the last matchup, then 397 to Washington. So Philadelphia has been allowing basically 350 yards a game for over a month now.
Mm-hmm. I like these comments here in the chat. Big Cheesy just wants to dunk over Jake on the hoop behind him. I feel the same way. I mean, the decoration in there is just all time. Where's he at?
I got to show Big Cheesy my house. I have an adjustable rim in my backyard, so I shoot my free throws and then I end it with my classic Dominique Wilkins off the backboard. I make them around 30% of the time. It is 7.5 feet, so it's.
We don't need to hear about your adjustable rim anymore. All right, that's all the time we have today. There are obviously more NFL games to talk about later, just not really act now urgency or steam urgency right now, but we will keep you guys updated as that happens. Obviously, we'll be waiting to talk about Indianapolis and Cincinnati and Jacksonville in Cleveland after tonight's game. So again, any questions you have, reach out to us on Twitter before tonight. Jake's got all the college stuff figured out. We're going to start to look into the NFL draft soon, some early odds from Jake, the NFL draft master. We'll let you guys in on that. So with that said, good luck with your bets tonight. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 1.